All right, you guys, let's talk thesis statements for Essay 3. Thesis statements for Essay 3 are super interesting because they are essentially the same thing as the thesis statement for the Essay 1, right? The illustration example essay, in the sense that we need a statement of purpose and forecast elements. But there's one other thing we need to add now, and that's our counter-argument. We need to indicate our counter-argument in our thesis statement. Now, if you remember from the Essay 3 assignment requirements video, I said that our counter-argument paragraph will go in the last body paragraph right before the conclusion, right? The interesting thing is that when we create our thesis, our counter-argument should go first. And you might say, well, that doesn't sound organized, but guess what? There's a reason for this, right? There's always a reason. And that reason is that we want to minimize it. We want to hide it. We want to bury it. And the best way to think about this is for me to give you a little bit of a story here. Now, this story is not my own personal experience, but it may be something that resonates with you in terms of helping explain why minimizing is so effective in this case for this essay. So imagine this. You're a teenager. Whether you're a teenager now or you were a teenager in the past, we know what it's like, right? So you're a teenager and you want to go out with your friends. Right? You go to your mom and you say, hey, can I please go out with my friends? They're hanging out. It's going to be awesome. And she says, no. And you sit there and you're like, man, I wish I could go out with my friends. That would be awesome. And then you have this thought, right? You think, if I snuck out, she would never know, right? So you open your window, you climb down. Let's say you're on the first floor, just to make it a little safer, right? So you climb out and you go to meet your friends. Now, your friends are meeting in an old schoolyard. Okay, cool. But the old schoolyard locks the fence around the school at night. So you get up to the fence, you see your friends inside, you're all jazzed. You start climbing the fence, because, I mean, how else are you going to get in? And you cut your hand. All right, you cut it right on the back, right? You just like sliced it against like a piece of the rusty fence. All right, so you hang out with your friends, you make it back home, you sneak in your window, no one knows what you've done, right? They don't know that you've snuck out, you made it, you're good. So you sleeping in, because the next day is Saturday, and your mom knocks on your door and says, hey, I made your favorites, pancakes. You jump up, you run downstairs because, I mean, pancakes. Come on. And you sit down at the table, you grab the butter to put some on your pancakes, and your mom says, hey, what's that on your hand? And you just go, no. So you start to tell her the story, right? You start saying, oh, Mom, it's not a big deal. I just cut myself, it's fine. And then she's like, okay, if your mom's anything like mine, she's going to say, you're going to tell me more about this. And so your brain starts going. Right? You're spinning your wheels trying to figure out what you can tell her. And you say, well, I was hanging out with my friends and I just cut it on a fence. It's not a big deal. And, you know, your mom's like, well, you know, when were you hanging out with your friends? I didn't see that at dinner. And you're like, oh, busted. But you know what? You don't give in. So you start, you know, talking about other things. You're like, oh, you know, it's not a big deal. It doesn't even hurt. I don't even think I need a tetanus shot or anything. And then she's like, well, let me see it, because moms, right? So you show her your hand, she's looking at it, and she starts asking you about when you saw your friends again. Well, it's time to change that tune, right? It's time to get us away from this part of the story you don't want to tell. And so you're like, actually, now that you're poking it, man, it hurts a lot. Maybe I do need a tetanus shot. That fence was kind of rusty, you know, and you're thinking, all right, the more I can like lay this on thick, the less she's going to remember that I was hanging out with my friends, right? And I mean, that might work depending on your mom, but that's kind of what we want to do here, right? We want to kind of sneak in our counter-argument at the beginning of our thesis and then be like, but we're talking about this thing because it's awesome, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to minimize the thing that we don't really want to talk about and then focus on how we are going to argue this. So you might say, well, how do we do that? So you'd say, although some people or some organizations or this particular organization believes this thing, this counter argument, most would say that blah, 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 right? Whatever your statement of purpose is. Because this and this and this, right? So you can see that by saying, while some people, right, suggesting those people over there, the ones we're not going to talk about, or organizations like this particular one, they think this thing, right? And that language is very dismissive. While some say, or although some say, that's like, don't worry about them. That while and that although make a big difference here, right? Because it suggests that this is something diminutive. This is smaller. This is not a big thing. And then you go into the real meat and potatoes, right? Many people believe this particular thing, or most other organizations believe this. Now, you want to avoid things like absolutes, where you say everyone, except for those people think that. And what an absolute is someone always does something or never does something, right? Those are absolutes. There's no wiggle room there. The only thing that's absolute in this world is that there are no absolutes. The beautiful thing about humanity is that we're all different. So we all have different ideas, different beliefs, and all of those things inform our choices. So you want to avoid that always and never and lay in the gray area, right? That's where we want our ideas to lay. So what you want to do is you make a strong statement about your position after you make that dismissive statement about the counter-argument, okay? Essentially, you're saying, those people think this, but I think this because of this and this and this, right? So we're doing the same thing we did with our illustration example essay, that essay 1, but we're showing that there is another side, and that other side is just, we don't need to worry about it, right? They think that. And then later on, we're dismissing it again because we are in our actual essay, right? First in our thesis, last in our essay. We just identify it really briefly, a sentence or two at max, and then spend the rest of the paragraph talking about why it's bogus. Okay, reaffirming your argument, making a clear position about why your side is better than their side. Okay, and it's at the end in the essay instead of the way that it is in the thesis, because at the end of the essay, you're already convincing your reader, right? If you've done a good job arguing, they're inching toward your position. And then you say, well, some people think this. And then they go, oh, okay, I'm listening. And then you say, well, it's garbage because all of these reasons. Then they go, all right, right? So that's the goal here. So your thesis dictates what's going to happen. Again, your statement of purpose guides your entire essay, right? This is what I'm going to argue. That's essentially what it says. It's a big, bright neon sign. And then your 3 forecast elements are going to identify the different ways you will argue it. And of course, those will all be presented in your topic sentences of each body paragraph, right? That first sentence. Okay, so you really want to make sure your thesis statement is clear, identifies your counter-argument, identifies your statement of purpose, and then your forecast elements. All right, you guys, hopefully you found that helpful. If you have questions or anything, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great night, do great things, and I will see you next time. Bye.